Well, I hope that you have had a great day today. I hope things are going well for you. I hope that you're excited about studying the Lord's Word tonight. I know that I am. Tonight is the night. Tonight is the night. If you have been looking forward to get out of the book, well, not the book. If you've been looking forward to getting out of the book of James, tonight's not your night. But if you've been looking forward to getting out of James chapter 2 and into James chapter 3, then tonight is your night, because we are about to move out of James chapter 2 and into James chapter 3. With that being said, if you haven't read James chapter 3 today, please pause the video, go read James chapter 3, and then come back and we will be ready to discuss James chapter 3. If you have read James chapter 3, we have one verse left in James chapter 2 before we move into chapter 3. Before we talk about that last verse, you might remember what we talked about last week. We talked about Abraham and Isaac and the faith that Abraham had in offering Isaac his son. And then we started to talk about Rahab and why Rahab is mentioned in James chapter 2. James says she's mentioned in James chapter, or he mentions her in chapter 2 because she is a great example of a faith that is active. That is, Rahab doesn't camp out in the camp of faith and doesn't do anything. She has no works involved in her faith. Nor does she camp out in the camp of works and doesn't have any faith. Rahab is an example of a person that has biblical faith. Biblical faith does not exclude works. It's not just belief. It's faith that has works. James chapter 2 will finish verse 26. For as the body apart from the Spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. It's as if James is saying, it's his last opportunity to tell us, if you haven't understood faith yet, let me tell you, James says, faith apart from works is dead. We might remember his example of a person walking up to a poor person, seeing them without, they don't really have any nice clothes. They're really hungry. And a person walks up to them and says, "Depart in peace, be warmed and filled." They give them this nice message, but they don't give them anything to help with their present state. What James says, that what that person said is meaningless. It doesn't do anything for the person that doesn't have any clothes and is starving. It's just a bunch of empty words. Faith apart from works is dead. Biblical faith is an active faith. We must trust God to do what God said He would do when we do what He has asked us to do. All right, well, into chapter 3, we'll go ahead and we'll read the section that we're going to talk about tonight. So we'll start there in verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look also at ships. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire! And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who have been made in the same likeness as God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing, my brothers. These things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. James begins chapter 3 with, well, I guess we should probably make that point. James didn't start chapter 3. The chapters are, James didn't divide his book into chapters. We did that later on. But this section, James starts out with something that is pretty scary. At least it's scary for people who teach others about the Lord. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. I don't know about you, but that's scary to me. That's really scary to me. People who teach others about the Lord will be judged with greater strictness. While that's scary, I don't know if James' intention is to scare us so that we don't want to teach others about the Lord anymore. I definitely don't think that's his intention. I think his intention might be to scare us a little bit, but I don't think the intention is to scare us so that we stop teaching others about the Lord. I think it might be to scare us in such a way that we really stop and we reflect on the things that we are telling others about the Lord. What is it? What is it, do you think, that would cause James to feel as if he needed to remind us to be cautious about what we teach others about the Lord? I suppose that there are probably a couple of good reasons. But maybe the best answer to that question might be because of the consequences of teaching something false about the Lord. You think about it. You think about all the people that have taught falsely about the Lord. That not only has a consequence for them in their life, but that has a spiritual consequence for others who hear that and believe it. I'm thinking about some people right now that don't teach some things that are right about the Lord, and because of that, people are going to be lost. What we teach about the Lord matters. What we teach about the Lord is important. And if James is trying to tell us anything, he's trying to tell us, please, I am pleading with you. If you teach things about the Lord, make sure you know what you are teaching. Make sure you aren't teaching anything that is false, because there can be great consequences for someone who teaches false things, not only in that individual's life, but in the lives of other people who hear those things. It's important. It's very important that we are mindful of the things that we teach about the Lord. I think sometimes where people can get caught up in this, especially, is when somebody comes up to them and they have a Bible question, and they come up to a particular person and they ask them this question, and this person really hears it, and they've kind of studied what this person is trying to ask, but they really don't know. But they answer the question as if they have studied it for years and they know everything about it. And they start telling this person some things that aren't necessarily right. It's okay. It is okay when people ask us questions about the Bible for us to say, I don't know. it shouldn't reflect, that shouldn't reflect poorly on us if somebody comes up to us and asks us a question and we say we don't know. If anything, James chapter 3 verse 1 tells us, at least implicitly, if you don't know something about the Lord, just say I don't know. Because what we teach about the Lord matters. I know I've said that probably 100 times now, and it feels like maybe I'm a broken record and just keep repeating the same thing. But wow, I mean, you just think about so many people that are lost because of what a person has taught about the Lord. It's scary. It really is. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. I don't think we're going to disagree with that thought by James. Jesus is the only perfect being to ever have walked the face of the planet. We know that we all sin. We all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man. When I was younger, I was told, there's some things I'm told when about my childhood that I just really don't believe from my parents all that much, because I can't imagine that I did some things that they say I did. But they told me a lot growing up. Chase, you know what? When you were smaller, your mouth got you in a world of trouble. You just did not know when to stop running your mouth. Somebody would say something to you, and the best thing for you to do was just keep your mouth shut, but it's like you couldn't help it. You were sitting on the edge of your chair ready to open your mouth. I wonder about how many times in my life I have stumbled because of the things that I have said. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man. I'd be willing to say that we've all stumbled in things that we have said, because if not, we're perfect, and I doubt any one of us, I know none of us are perfect, because Jesus is the only perfect being to ever have lived. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. James is going to start giving us illustrations of what he's talking about, as he does throughout his entire book. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. I don't know a lot about horses. I'll just go ahead and admit it. In fact, I know very little about horses. I've ridden 2 horses in my entire life. I do know, though, that if you put a bit into the mouth of a horse, like James says, that you can pretty much make that horse go anywhere you want him to go. Unless he is just really mad and just throws you off, and when he gets you off, I guess he can do what he wants. But as long as he has the bit in his mouth and a human being is controlling that bit, that horse, that massive horse, will go wherever the human wants it to go. That little bitty thing can control the entire body of a horse. James' next example. Look also at the ships. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the pilot directs. I've been on one cruise in my life, and that was the biggest ship I have ever seen in my life. It had like 25 smaller boats on this ginormous boat. The propeller, though, on this boat, compared to the size of the ship, was nothing. I mean, this propeller was super small. But you know what? That little propeller, that captain could go up there and he could turn the wheel of the ship, and that propeller would turn, and guess what? That massive ship that was carrying, like I just said, 25 other boats on it. That small rudder would turn the entire ship. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts great things. Do you think that if we don't watch what we say, that we can quickly fall? We can quickly take a turn for the worst when we don't watch our mouths. Our tongue may be small. Our tongue may be, compared to the rest of our body, very small. But our tongue is dangerous and it is powerful. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire, James says. My sister, never forget the story that she told me. She was with her friend several years ago on the 4th of July, and they were shooting fireworks. Now, I love fireworks. Fireworks are so interesting to me, and I love being with people and shooting fireworks. But they were shooting fireworks, but it hadn't rained. They were going to shoot them in this field, like 11-acre field. And it hadn't rained for days. Okay, so they were shooting these bottle rockets off, and then they would go get them, so the bottle rockets wouldn't sit there and start a fire. But some guys came over to where they were shooting their bottle rockets, and one guy, if I understand it correctly, he shot his bottle rocket off, and it landed in this field, but it never exploded. So this guy just thought, well, it's a dud, so he didn't bother to go pick it up. Well, it did explode. He just didn't know it exploded. And like I said, it hadn't rained in a while, and that field was dry, and when that bottle rocket exploded, it lit the field on fire, and if I understand it correctly, 8 out of the 11 acres of the field burned. 8 out of the 11 acres of the field burned because of a small bottle rocket, a small firework that is literally that big and tied to a stick. And if he would have let it, not he, the fire department, if the fire department would have let it, it would have burned all 11 acres and then some. We shouldn't underestimate the power of small things. We shouldn't underestimate the power of our tongue, because our tongue is small, but it can be very, very destructive. And the tongue is a fire. He's connecting that to what he just previously said, what we just talked about, how great a forest set ablaze by such a small fire. Our tongue is a fire. James is saying, watch out, it's destructive. A world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. Well, we will have to pick up next week because it feels like time has flown. At least it has to me. We're out of time. I hope that you have a great rest of the week. I can't wait to finish our discussion next Wednesday on the tongue. I can't wait to see everybody on Sunday. We love you and we are praying for you. God bless.